Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Economic Development Committee work session. We have quite a few things to go over today. We're going to start with item number 1, and that's with the Department of Permitting Services. Lots to discuss. Here, there are comments about fees. Look forward to that conversation. And I'm gonna ask our legislative analyst, it's really dark over there, I don't know why, Mr. Ali, to kick us off. And if somebody can please turn on those lights, because the lights.
We can't see these guys.
We see you, but not
Wave your hand.
but not as much as we like to see you. I'm talking about the lights. But you can kick us off while they fix that. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, good afternoon. Item 1 is the Department of Permitting Services. The county executive, how much on the cover page here, is recommending an increase of $1.7 million from the FY26 budget. They're recommending 2 new positions, and then also $1.5 million in compensation adjustments. They do receive an operating budget equity tool analysis, which is stated they have shown a sustained commitment to advancing racial equity and social justice. Also, as the chair noted, they are proposing to increase fees using a split rate approach where commercial fees would increase by 25% and residential permit fees would increase by 10%. Council staff will be recommending a flat increase for your consideration instead of the county executive's proposal. Okay, just to walk you through the packet, on page 2, you can see the summary of the change in the budget. On page 2 and 3, you've provided a summary of all of the divisions of DPS and the work that they do, as well as the number of FTEs that they've had by division in FY26. Page 3 and 4 show some accomplishments for the year, and that's also included in the presentation that they'll be providing. It's also attached on the circle pages. As I noted, they received an OBET analysis, and I believe it was a score of 7. And you can see what the analysis stated in section D on page 4. I also have conducted a base budget review for DPS. That was the one department that I did as part of the base budget review thing that council staff did, and you can see that here. So we basically just pull out all of their operating expenses. I have the full report attached in the circle pages as well, so you can see the breakdown of operating expenses by division. You can see their contracts, how much they're spending on furniture, administrative, and all that kind of thing. And I've also noted some of the contracts that they have. Notably, they have a $1 million contract with the Green Bank to provide technical support for building and energy code compliance. Okay, so just following up on an issue that has been discussed over the last couple of years, but DPS had a very large fund balance over the past few fiscal years, spurred largely through the pandemic because they had artificially low costs and a lot of activity, and so their fund balance grew. They had conducted a fee study in 2023 to understand how to manage this. Ultimately, the fee study found that their fees were actually below cost recovery. So even though they were making a lot of money, the fees were actually priced below what it cost to provide that service. But because they had a fund balance, the consultant recommended not changing fees and letting attrition basically eat into the fund balance. And that's basically happened now. And we are in the state where the fund balance is now below the policy level of 30%, which the council increased it to in FY25. Section F just shows the changes. I've sort of pulled out a number that's not shown in the budget, the 7.4 million. And this number is just for you to sort of grasp and sort of get a sense of scale of how much more revenue they're assuming through their fee increase. So if there was no fee increase, their revenues would be 7.4 million less than what the county executive is showing in his budget. Okay, so just sort of diving into this fee rate increase issue. So the county executive, as I said, is recommending a split rate increase, 25% for commercial fees and 10% for residential fees. The most recent fee increase was in FY20, and that was a 3% increase, and DPS will note that as well in their presentation. As I already noted what the fee study had stated, and so, in the last 2 years, a fee rate was not increased, even though it could have been pursued at that time. One of the reasons, though, that this attrition has happened faster than maybe anticipated is DPS has some say over their operating expenses in terms of the FTEs that they employ. They're an enterprise fund, so they can also sort of grow their revenues or shrink their fees to match their activity. But importantly, they are not actually in control of the cost to have the staff, because the wage and compensation is decided by the council, not by DPS. So while they're an enterprise fund and they do get to control their fee rates, and they do get to control to some extent the number of staff that they have, they're not in control of the amount that they have to pay that staff. And so that is a cost that's sort of slightly outside of the sort of enterprise sort of setup that they have. And so this year, when permitting activity declined and their operating expenses are very high, which the fee study found, compared to their revenues, that ate into their fund balance, and now they're well below the 30% requirement. You can see the gap that's projected for FY27 on Figure 1, and you can see how much operating expenses would exceed revenues if there was no fee increase. Yeah, so we'd also noted, staffing level doesn't necessarily shrink or grow because it can be sticky. It's hard to sort of adjust staffing levels on a year-to-year basis. So that's just another consideration. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything on my packet here. Yeah, and you can sort of see on page 8 in Figure 2 how their revenue has been impacted. So historically, the division that's generated the most revenue for them has been commercial building and residential construction, and commercial building in particular has seen a dip from FY24 to FY25, and another dip to FY26 to date. Of course, there are a few months left in the fiscal year, but it's much lower, and so that's obviously going to reduce their fund balance. The county executive, as I said, is recommending the split rate approach. Under his approach, another fee increase in FY28 could still be necessary. So you can see on page 9, even assuming the fee increase that he's proposed, 25% for commercial, 10% for residential, expenditures would exceed revenues. So if there is an unexpected increase in permit applications based on this projection, there may still need to be a fee increase next year. So we just wanted to think a little bit through the justification for the split rate approach, knowing that obviously a fee rate increase is clearly potentially needed, just given the fund balance. So what would be the purpose of splitting the increase? Well, it could be potentially, and this is sort of what's been indicated to us, is really maintaining affordability for homeowners. The problem is this approach doesn't really sort homeowners from everybody else, because while homeowners do pay residential permit fees, so do developers of single-family projects, townhome projects, custom home builders. So they would all get an artificially lower increase relative to commercial permits. There's also housing development that pays commercial permit fees. So multifamily development is a commercial project, even though it's a residential use. And that would face a 25% increase, as well as other, shopping center development. There's probably not going to be a lot of office development. But also, alterations in buildings for like the fit out of a new restaurant or a new small business, those would pay the 25% increase to commercial fees. So to the extent it's about maintaining affordability for residents, this wouldn't necessarily do that, in that, it wouldn't necessarily achieve that cleanly. And as we'll note also, the relative fee increase is small, so providing a smaller increase to residential permit fees compared to commercial fees is not actually a huge expense in and of itself. The other thing is that there are business impacts of having a split rate increase. So you can already see on table 3 and page 10 that 2 divisions really cover the costs of the whole department, because there's divisions that don't generate any revenue, and so naturally some of the revenue has to pay for the fixed costs throughout the department. But you can see that commercial building recovers a much larger share of the overall cost in FY26, than residential building. And this could be just a snapshot in time, but the point is, if you increase commercial fees, then the commercial fees would have to cover a larger share of the cost in the department because you're not increasing the residential fees by as much. And that doesn't necessarily even account for the fact that if you increase commercial fees, which is so necessary for the business, if that in and of itself reduces commercial permits, then that would actually worsen the fund balance, because the very business that is necessary to increase revenues or recover the fund balance is the one that's facing the cost increase. And so it sort of messes with the business to have a split rate increase. Also, just in terms of the process here, the Department of Permitting Services can increase fees unilaterally by 20%, reduce them by 20% or increase them by 20%. If they change it by more than 20%, a fee study is required in the following fiscal year. OCA has confirmed that they can interpret this factor to apply to each fee. They can change each fee by up to 20% or reduce it by 20%, but that is not necessarily how it seems to be a problem. I mean, while it may be legally defensible, it may be a policy question of, is that how this factor was intended to be applied, on a fee-to-fee basis or across all the fees? Again, to the extent that the commercial fees are increasing by 25%, it would trigger a fee study, which also has a cost of up to maybe $300,000 based on DPS's estimates. So even though it would increase the revenue, there would be an associated cost and process in FY27 to do it this way. So for all of those reasons, we think that it's a little more cumbersome to have the split rate increase. It creates risk for the business model. It doesn't effectively meet the intent of protecting costs for residential permits. And so for that reason, council staff is recommending a flat fee increase instead. And you can see the impacts of that on table 4. It's data that OMB provided. And you can see how different increases affect the fund balance. So under the county executive's proposal, the fund balance would be 19.3%, which is close to the 20% that it was in FY25 and prior. If you increase fees by a flat 10%, the fund balance would be 14%, which is roughly half of the current requirement. 15% leads to a 16.3% fund balance, and then a 20% increase would yield a 18.5% fund balance. These are marginal increases and ultimately projections, and they would be below their policy requirement anyway. They did analyze the impact to their sort of benchmarking regionally based on the proposed increase, and found that their relative ranking for all of these permits with a 10% increase for residential and 25% for commercial wouldn't change the ranking meaningfully. Council staff would note that if you applied a 20% increase on residential permits, this analysis does not change. So they're showing a 10% increase. If it was a 20% increase, there still wouldn't be a change in the ranking. And the overall increase in dollars is on like $10, $20, $30. It's not a huge increase over the county executive's proposal. So for all of those reasons, we would recommend you take a support a flat fee increase. Do you want me to pause there or just continue with the positions discussion?
No, I think it's best for this one to pause. I can tell you right now, I'm not supporting any additional positions, but we'll get there. Let's hear from the DPS team on these fees, and then I'm going to open it up to the committee to ask questions. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, committee. Ravi Sabakan, Director DPS. Let me just preface by stating I want to thank you on behalf of the county executive for being before you today to present our proposed budget. I want to thank OMB for working continuously with us to examine the needs of the department and the county. And essentially, I'll start by reminding everyone the mission of DPS. Essentially, most building departments, the missions, they might be worded differently, but they're more or less the same. We're here to ensure the safety, protection, sustainability, and also economic vitality of our community. And we do that by, issuing, 40,000 permits a year, ensuring that they're code compliant, performing 150,000 plus inspections throughout all our divisions, residential, commercial, land development, zoning, responding to 50,000 plus service complaints. Those are neighbors complaining about, encroachments next door or illegal construction. So we do a lot, and we want to maintain those levels. If Montgomery County, as you all know, one of the largest counties in this country, top 20, we want to make sure that we remain at this, in terms of service levels. World class is the term that we often use. Performing, outside the Washington, D.C. area is to be expected. We're a role model. You talk to folks in the state, they look at Montgomery County across the board, whether it's HHS, permitting, DOT, and we want to maintain that. And so our exercise is a constant exercise in continuous improvement. Yeah, we focus on the emergencies, the things, the daily things that have to be done, but at the same time, we're locked in on making sure that our department is serving at the most optimal level possible, and that never ends. I don't sleep because I'm constantly thinking, how can we, improve our process? And this is just a never-ending thing, and that's been filtered down to staff, frontline staff, onto leadership. So here we are. This is the first time, as Bilal alluded to. Again, we're so locked in on making sure we're doing the things necessary with our process improvement, just completing our strategic plan, but we're circling back on our budget as we do every year, and coordinated, as I alluded to, with OMB, and pretty much received forecasts that, albeit something that we had, anticipated, we actually stated, if you recall years past, that those reserve levels would not remain high. And sure enough, we see through the deficits over the course of the last few years, the decline in those revenues. So you need to be able to make those adjustments, make those, planning forecasts accordingly. And with those forecasts, again, if OMB is projecting in a straight line, I mentioned the 2 consecutive years of shortfalls to the tune of $4 or $5 million, and if it continues for this, we've got 1 quarter left in 26, and then more importantly, the forthcoming fiscal years, what do you do? When somebody tells you there's a forecast for severe weather, what do you do? If it's HMS, we respond accordingly, we prepare. And that was the prudent thing that we did, and we wanted to make sure that we at least be prepared to be able to provide the best service in Montgomery County. And so be it, that's what we've come up with as a proposed solution, because the alternative, doing nothing, while it may not be immediate, i.e. FY27, it's the forthcoming fiscal years that, present the challenges. And again, we want to maintain those high level of service for the county. We don't want to be looking at financial distress. The nature of an enterprise fund. It's pros and cons with it. When the economy is good, hey, but when it's bad, that's the con that you have to look at. So not doing anything, I truly feel would be somewhat negligent, and that's why I say we have to be at least prepared. We have to at least do something that's going to put us in a position to deal with those, FY28s, FY29s down the road.
Can you? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but just to be very specific, don't you think the alternative option that Mr. Ali mentioned, the flat fee rate increase that he suggested, is reasonable?
I think it works. Yes, I do understand, and to my own staff, having different percentage factors makes it very challenging just to make those adjustments. But again, I was being sensitive to our homeowners from the residents and said, okay, let's decrease that, knowing that it's much more difficult to implement. But to answer your question, I think that works. We still have to be constantly looking, at the analytics, at the numbers to see where we're going, because it's that FY28, 29 that we have to really, pay close attention to. And when you're dealing with an enterprise fund, and again, we've talked to other jurisdictions, and one example, I won't name the jurisdiction, came up with a significant increase in just one fiscal year, probably triple what we're looking at. And that's one of the effects when you don't, I say don't plan accordingly. You get a drastic 1 year implementation that, we're trying to avoid something like that here in Montgomery County.
Understood. I'm going to open it up to, is there anything else before I open it up? I don't want to interrupt you.
Well, again, we took the opportunity to be collaborative. We met with our industry partners, developers, just to let them know what we were looking at, and the responses, were expected. Obviously we talked to almost every jurisdiction, using our networks, and surprisingly, almost all of them have increased their permit fees over the last few years. That this doesn't mean that, okay, well, since they did it, we need to do it here in Montgomery County. There has to be a reason, and there has to be, what exactly, is necessary for Montgomery County based on the level of service that, we're trying to maintain and the revenues that are forthcoming. So we've done our due diligence, I guess, to sum things up.
And I have no doubt that you have. Maybe I'm going to open it up so you can feel some of the questions that I know committee members have, and that will probably make the process smoother. So I'm going to start with Council Vice President Malcolm.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate also that this is not the first time we're seeing this. We had the discussion already, so I appreciate that. The thing, looking at the table 2 on page 9, top of page 9. So I understand that one of the primary reasons that we're looking at this change is because of the decrease in revenues because of the multifamily permits, reduction in multifamily permits. Debatable as to why that is. However, I think that increasing the fee 25% for the multifamily high-rise at this point in time just creates an additional barrier. And I appreciate you talking with the developers. They've been talking to us about it, of course. But I think that, we have a situation where we desperately need housing, and creating this an additional barrier, an additional cost. And I know that in the grand scheme of building a 300 unit building, this is a tiny amount, but it becomes just another thing that's increased, considering the cost of construction, et cetera. So I'm leaning more towards what Mr. Ali's proposing, just for this specific. And I know that it would impact the single family as well, and and there's it will increase their cost more. But that's kind of where I'm leaning.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation to DPS. I think it's important to note that these fees have not increased since FY20. That needs to be restated. So it is understandable that there be an adjustment for FY27 because it has not increased from FY20. I don't know if there's any other aspect of this budget that has not increased at all in such an amount of time. So that is the framing, but it has to be asked about the differential between the residential and the commercial. Why did the county executive propose two different rates?
I'll take the hit on that. I mean, it really, it's best practice to have it evenly, increased or adjusted. I don't know of any other example where you broke it up, between residential and commercial. I think I was just adamant, and for a homeowner, maybe it's just a sensitive spot for me, just making sure that changes don't occur to the point where a homeowner feels the burden of, living out their dream with their 3-bedroom addition or 1-bedroom addition. The reality is that won't impact things. I think it was more the optics, and we just kind of went with that. But I think for the most part, it was felt that we should keep it even. And again, most examples that you see, it's a 10%, it's a 20% across the board.
Yeah, I think it's optics as well. And the way I see it, the county executive is prioritizing homeowners over renters. That's the optics. If the county executive wants to provide a lower rate for homeowners for the addition at the expense of building more homes, commercial property, high-rise property, and tack on a higher rate there, he has succeeded in that optical illusion of being able to create more housing. And that leads to my next question as well, and you've already kind of framed it as to what best practices are. I read into it what you think best practices are, and I very specifically asked the question as to why the county executive made this recommendation, not the department per se. We are not building multifamily housing in Montgomery County. Permits have dropped 97% since rent stabilization became law. And so let me ask it a different way. What is expected to be gotten out of a 25% increase in fees for multifamily when there is not much multifamily being built?
Well, that's a good question. I truly don't believe the intent was to make an adjustment targeting specifically multifamily. Yes, multifamily becomes a part, even though it's residential as stated, it becomes a part of our commercial fee based on how we structure our permitting. But it's the collective, of all the, the small tenant fit outs, the restaurants. And that was, I guess, deemed, an appropriate amount based on the analysis conducted at 25%. But it wasn't intended, to focus single out. We understand fully the dynamics that's occurring with our multifamily. As we point out, that's part of the reason why we're, in this situation. But it's certainly not intended to be counter to, to what we're trying to accomplish in terms of building, the multifamily housing or other forms of housing here in the county.
I asked the question because it speaks to the other challenges that we're dealing with here. And, I made my point, so I won't belabor that. But I do have problems with the bifurcated proposal. I'll support. It sounds like I'll go with the committee and support staff recommendation. And the only reason I think staff recommendation is fair because this fee has not changed since FY20. And for any of our 7 colleagues who are not here, it is important to make that point, that nearly every other fee, or dare I say, every fee in the county has changed since FY20. This one has not. And if it is simply a matter of paying for operations, even not expanding the size of operations, but just maintaining current operations, then it's something that just has to be done.
Well, I commend you, Councilmember Glass, for pointing that out. That's an extremely important point that we need to emphasize. It's been 7-8 years since a change has been made to our fees.
Thank you. I yield back.
So good afternoon. Ihsan Motazi, Deputy Director with DPS, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. And by the way, thank you to Mr. Bilal, done an excellent job of going through all these numbers and everything, and thank you, Council Member Glass, for bringing the concern up. I totally understand your point. I just want to mention the reason the cost of residential is lower than commercial. Really, the complexity of the commercial projects are extremely complex. And, the new and the old, you're talking about multifamilies or other type, interior alteration. these are evolve a lot of different reviews associated with it, the structural, you're looking at, all the energy codes, life safety. So that's, when you look at all the jurisdiction, usually the commercial fees are higher than the residential. Really residential, you're looking, it's one staff is able to review all the different disciplines that associated, architectural, structural, everything associated with that residential permit. But when you get into the commercial, absolutely it needs more, it gets a lot more critical and technical. So just one aspect, but to your point, the last 7 years, I appreciate it, but really DPS was created back in 1996 as an enterprise fund, not to rely on general fund, and to recover its cost for operation. And since then, I think we believe once we have increased the rate, which was 7 years ago. And everything has gone, you pointed out, so hopefully we are sitting here next year and the revenue is good and we'll be able to lower our fees. Thank you.
Let's hope for a great year next year. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you to my colleagues and staff for the recommendations. Just want to make sure that we're forecasting in the out years, if we do the flat fee increase, will this give us enough reserves for the future years so that we are not finding ourselves in this situation? Because we were all trying to figure out what to do with your fund balance, last year, 2 years ago. So I was definitely surprised to see how quickly it had disappeared. So
Has anybody seen my crystal ball? Yeah. Well, from the discussions with OMB, even with the proposed increases, you're still, based on straight line projections and forecasting, you're still potentially looking, again, circa FY 28, 29 at, because of the level of, projected revenues having to come back to the table. We're all keeping our fingers crossed, but to answer the question, there's still that possibility. We're going to do everything within our powers to, ensure that the process is tight. We're doing the necessary things to keep the revenue levels where they need to be. Some of it obviously is out of our control, but yes, there is still that possibility that we could be. I'm going to remain optimistic and hope that we won't have to. But even with a slight increase, being honest, you're still potentially looking. Especially, FY 27, falling, at that 16%, we just increased to 30% fund balance. You're still, far below those levels, and then it could potentially get worse, with those subsequent years. Again, on that straight line projection, you could be at a straight line, or you could be even less than what we have been doing. So it's just the unknowns there.
okay.
And if I may add, Anita
Yes.
Haite, OMB, you asked a question about fund balance. With the CE's recommendation, we're looking at a fund balance of 19%. If we go to FY 28, we're looking at 1.4%. And then we go lower in FY 29, negative 27%.
Yes, that's what.
And it gets worse through 32.
So I know we cannot do a 20% increase without, requiring the fee study. But can we do a graduated increase? Like every year we're increasing by a certain increment?
So you can do up to 20 without the fee study, so 20 would be
so
allowed.
we could do.
Yeah, and it's possible that they would need to adjust fees next year as well, because regardless, the
So we'll
revenues
just
wouldn't catch up.
subsequently continue
Yeah.
to increase.
But they have the authority to do that with this factor,
Yes.
as long as it's between like 20%.
And that has been
to
done,
20.
actually. I can give you an example
Okay.
across the river where they just did a 25%, and they pointed out to us that this year they'll be doing another 5%, and then each year thereafter. So to your point, I don't want to say it becomes in perpetuity, but for the next coming years, they've already realized that they're going to have to do an annual small, 5% or thereabout to sustain them.
The one thing I would add, I just think it's helpful for this conversation. There's all kinds of things could happen to the development economy over the next years. Lots of uncertainty, but there is reason to believe that in Montgomery County there could be an uptick in multifamily permits because of the commercial to residential reconstruction process and tax abatement, which we know that there are applications in planning. And once those site plans are approved, which there's also a clock at planning, that there's a clock that starts for DPS by when they have to pull a building permit to get the tax abatement. So once those start to percolate into the system, it's possible those could be incorporated into the projections because we know that they'll have to happen. Right now, it's obviously based on a projection of past activity, which doesn't account for that. But, just pointing out a silver lining, it's hard to account for yet. But.
So you are recommending the 10 or 20?
Sorry, I did not recommend an amount because, it's hard to decide. It's a policy question, but 10 to 20 all do get you into a double-digit fund balance.
So if we do a flat, what's the recommended amount, Director?
Excuse me. I would think 20% would be an amount that we could work with. At the same time, if we go 15 across the board, I think for the immediate future, we will be in decent shape. But again, because of the uncertainty, you just don't know for those, later fiscal years what will unfold. But for the immediate, an increase, I think, helps us. The whole point is to make sure that we stay at healthy reserve levels.
Because the alternative is you go negative, we start losing staff. You have to start cutting jobs and actual people from your department.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the concern.
Because I don't think we're talking about the reality that's going to come in the next 3 years if permitting continues at the same rate that it is now. So.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So can we say flat fee increase at 15%? I'm looking at page 14. 15% sounds reasonable?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I hear yes, with no objection. Okay, we're gonna say the recommendation would be flat fee at 15%, okay? And we'll have this conversation again next year and see how things go, okay? We're gonna move on to the second item within this packet, and it's about the two positions that DPS is requesting. I am gonna be consistent with my other committee and say no to every single new position. We cannot afford them, but that's my position. I need the DPS to express why they're requesting them, and then I'll open it up. But go ahead.
I can talk to the fire code compliance that we are asking for that. So this is in regard to the Bill 2125 that was passed a few years ago for emergency safety plan for all multifamily buildings. At that time, we did a fiscal impact study and we provided that to the committee. And we requested, we said it would be 5 people. We have looked at it again. As Mr. Council Member Evans told me a year ago, streamline with your existing people. So we are utilizing our own folks to do most of the work. We have moved people around. We are able to do all that work. Instead of asking for 5 people, we are asking for 1 person to do the job. And that was really, you're talking about thousands of buildings out there. And I understand that the time we are in, you're stopping all the hiring and all that. But this is a really critical, important position that the council wanted and supported. And for us, we are here to do what you guys are wanting to do and approve.
What happens if you don't get that position? This is your time to sell.
Well, that's what I'm telling you. You're talking about thousands, so it's going to be delayed. It's going to be delayed to review the safety plan. So if it's important to have a plan that people, in case of emergency, to get out of the building, this is going to have an impact, because honestly, we got one person right now dedicated to do all this.
I will add to that, Madam Chair, President, not adding that position potentially, anytime you enact new laws or, adopt new codes, the worst thing you want to see happen is selective or non-enforcement, just because of lack of resources or, lack of training. In this case, it would definitely be a lack of resources. Our fire code compliance inspectors are extremely, their workload is extremely heavy as it is. Now with Bill 724 enacted and the additional workload with those emergency safety plan ensuring compliance, we just don't want to see, when the reports come out, you start to see that, hey, these apartment buildings were never even looked at, or that was never enforced, and that's not a good look for the county. None of us want to see that. So we want to make sure that we've got adequate resources to do what was intended with that law.
Okay, can you now speak on the next item, the one position for permitting services, commercial new fast track?
Sure. So I don't know if you all recall when my confirmation 3 years ago, we spoke to the concept of, concierge and, it's part of a streamlining effort, and getting into it, you realize obviously it takes resources, it takes a skill set. The concept is there. We're trying to basically implement a fast track program. We spoke already about how commercial is the most visible. I'm not going to say most important, but it's certainly in terms of volume, it's the biggest for the department. So for our small business, which we're all sensitive to, I say the small business, the backbone of our community, we want to make sure that those small business permits, those restaurants, those fit outs, get the attention they deserve, and we want to be able to have a program set up where those permits are fast tracked, where currently you're talking weeks and months to now you're talking a day or potentially a week, with getting one individual who has a skill set to review electrical, building, multiple disciplines, meet with customers, with set hours in Wheaton and get those permits out same day potentially. That's a game changer for Montgomery County. So that's really what we're looking at, is launching. Nobody's saying we want to start out with 5 new, positions, but let's crawl. Let's get that one person that can start that fast track for our small businesses, and you'll start to see our stakeholders much happier. Like, wow, Montgomery County's making a difference in these small business permits.
Thank you for that. As a reminder, we're looking to reduce the spending by $180 million right now. Just put that in context.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So DPS is 2 positions that are up for
Can you
consideration.
get this
I'm
closer to
sorry.
you?
DPS has 2 positions that you're considering. One of those positions, they had eliminated an M2 position for one of those positions. So the increase in FTEs is actually 1 in the department.
Yes, we did. Out to eliminate a chief position that had been vacant on the books for years, and we said, no, this is important. Let's get rid of that position which we're not using, the M2, and move forward with this.
That was a very important flag that I don't think was here, but thank you for that. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to start with Councilmember Sells.
Yes, just had a question about the fast track aspect. I know that you mentioned this would take up one position that's already been filled, that's already been eliminated, the fast track position, and you've already talked to planning and the person who's doing the code enforcement. Are you able to speak to the revenue that's been generated from the fire code enforcement that we've done, or any enforcement that this department has done outside of permitting fees? What sort of revenue are we generating with?
On the fire inspections?
Yeah, anyone in violation, whether it's fire inspections or something's not up to code, are we generating any revenue in that respect?
It's been, in terms of enforcement or revenues generated through fines and enforcement,
Yes.
relatively speaking, it's a small amount, compared to the permit revenue.
Okay.
As one who comes from other jurisdictions, it's, the position is a little different in that we have not been heavy-handed in terms of fines for various reasons. But
What are some of those reasons? Because
I can't speak to the philosophy for predecessors. I can use one example. When you're doing an investigation to look into illegal construction, for example, in other jurisdictions, as a means of deterring, bad actors, you have a penalty that's pretty strong. We've never really had that in the county, to my knowledge, and predecessors have had previously instructed staff to not even implement. We have, instead of like a fine amount for like a stop work order, we've had on the books a investigation fee. If a complaint comes in service request, there's like a de minimis $200, $150 investigation fee, and the predecessors even instructed staff not to levy that because the idea was to get compliance. I get that, but at the same time, that's a loss of revenue by selectively not applying that that amount for that purpose. So I've instructed that is something that's a best practice. We were actually losing revenue, spending gas and time going out to do those investigations, especially where we're finding violations. And we should be appropriately, assessing those fees.
So what's your plan to reinstate fees and ensure that we are abiding by the code enforcement laws and regulations? What's the plan?
The plan is to do,
Because this ensures that building owners are in compliance and we are putting residents and consumers into safe buildings. So alleviating fees because that's not what was done in the past, I don't see how that's, lessening our liability or the entire basis of this department. So I don't see how that's helping this department given the other financial constraints.
you have stated all facts, and I totally concur. So the plan is to do what is called out and
Okay. So you'll come
assess
back
those
to
fees.
us with a plan for enforcement
absolutely will.
for anyone in violation and what those new fees will entail and how you're going to communicate that with the business community, with the real estate, with small businesses. Okay.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Council Vice President Balcom.
Thank you. To speak on the positions, I think that from the first, I recommend that we put them on the reconciliation list. That's the best we can do. And I think that, and for me, it's consistency as well with my committees, putting things on the reconciliation list. So the first one, I think, is important that when we pass laws, we have the fiscal impact presented when we pass the laws. And so we have selective amnesia when it comes to the budget, and we have to make sure that if we pass the law, we're going to have to fund it. So from that one, the first one's important. The second one, this is exactly what we've been asking for long before I was even on this council, is to look at fast tracking. So I support both of these.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, can I just point something out regarding the rec list? This would be sort of on its own on the rec list since it's not tax supported, so it doesn't really solve the overall gap. And I do believe that OMB is accounted for this in their expenditures for the fiscal plan, so.
Yeah, okay. I support these positions.
I wanted to answer Councilmember Sales' question about the revenues. When we did the fiscal impact statement, we had, when we did the fiscal impact statement, we had a projection of $1.3 million over 6 years in revenues collected due to the enforcement of 21-25.
Thank you.
Councilmember Glass.
Thank you for the conversation. We pick up themes of this sort every year, and I'm having deja vu from previous years about fast tracking and streamlining. And so I guess the heart of the question is, what would this position do to fast track that streamlining cannot? Again, those are the two tracks. Every year I err on the side of streamlining rather than adding FTEs to do comparable work.
I would say in this particular concept, again, it's the vision of getting the small businesses what they should be getting in terms of expediting and competency. It's a little bit of a different animal, Councilmember. The skill set is different. The attention is different. You might say, yeah, well, why can't this be accomplished with existing staff? It's easier said than done. The vision also includes, like I mentioned, the concept, I think it's actually implemented in Anne Arundel County, where you have like set hours, like a Wednesday, where you can come in and set appointments or either, walk-ins and have that specialist, because really that's what that individual, is. It's a specialist who has a combination of customer service skills combined with the technical skills to be able to, produce, to get those reviews completed in a reasonable amount of time versus the normal tracking, like I said, where you're talking weeks and months. It hurts me that those small scope projects get caught up in the mist when they really deserve to be set aside with the ability to get those out a lot quicker. And we want those small businesses to be able to move faster so they can focus on their businesses rather than get hung up and back. But we understand that they don't have the ability necessarily, for, architects or engineers. And that's, again, another key point. That specialist, that multi-skilled plan reviewer can do the hand-holding that our normal staff just won't have the ability, time to do that. It's almost that white glove concept where they can come in. We employed this when I was in DC it was on the residential side. We want to kind of do the same concept with the commercial. With these small business owners who don't necessarily have the resources to utilize expediters or like I said, engineers or architects. So it's a lot of personal attention that our current staff it's I don't want to say impossible, but it's very difficult to produce that with the existing staff. But getting a specialist who's a point of contact, so to speak, will make a tremendous difference in the lives of those small business owners.
Thank you. And Mr. Ali, you noted that because this is part of the enterprise fund, it does not go on the rec list. So if the committee approves it, then it just comes out of the overall budget, which we're already adding the 15% fee increase to. All of that. Okay. Again, Director, I understand exactly the direction that you're going in, and it speaks to the need for our small businesses to get extra help because we have a convoluted process. That is something I think everybody agrees on. The process is too complicated. I continue to believe that the way we help our small businesses is not by adding full-time employees to then help them, if they are in fact able to get away from their work, to come down here, or if they know about it. I think the answer is to just make it easier for them to go through the process and to streamline. So I will not be supporting this.
Thank you for that. Also, I just can't support, even if it comes from the enterprise. I mean, we just approved increasing your fees. Now you're adding more staff. who are gonna be paid by the same enterprise. So next year, you're gonna come back and say, now we need to have another fee increase so we can support the additional staff that you're adding. I think we need to do a better job training folks, and this is just not the year to add more people. We already say yes to the fee increase. I just don't see it, and I won't support it. So, Councilmember Sales.
Yes, just one last question. Is there a way that we can cross-train an individual to still create that window where we can have this concierge service 1 day a week? Like, what is happening with the other two? How many staff are in the department, Director Sabakan? 200?
250.
250. I mean,
Great question. Great points. Where there's a will, there's a way.
okay, I like that. Let's
We're
stop.
going to try to figure out how to make it happen. That's
Yeah, let's pilot it. Let's pilot it, and let's see how many wins we can speak up during the next budget season for this piloted program. Even if it's once a week, every other week, twice a month, let's see who we can cross-train for 8 hours, once every 2 weeks, starting in the fall. Let's start in September to get you to ramp up, and let's hear about the concierge service and see if it's worth adding additional staff, or how you're able to help our businesses and the wins and the benefits that we see from this. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So is this a 3-1 vote? Go ahead, Council Vice President Bell.
Yes, I'd like to split the two because I think that Councilmember Sales' idea is good. So I am voting to fund 2.1 and to defer 2.2.
Is there a second on the motion?
You said.
No, I was going to, I'm not making a motion, but if the recommendation is, if we do them one at a time, I support funding 2.1.
Okay. On the rec list?
No.
Or just funding?
Period.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if it's bringing in $1 million, it pays for itself. That's what the county executive staff just said about code enforcement revenue.
I think in general, not this one, not this one.
Oh.
Let me just say, the reason that I'm supporting this one position is because we passed a law to do this work, and we haven't funded the DEP to do this work. That's why I'm supporting 2.1.
I'll support it. Yeah.
So, and Council, no. So it's a 2-2 vote on that one. And then for the 2.2 position, I'm assuming it's a no from everyone. Okay, that's a no from everyone. So now let's move on to item 3.1, restore computer maintenance contract. What is this about? Honestly, we can't do this, but tell me.
This was a technical error on OMB's side. So there was a contract that was awarded, and when it was a one-time contract, and the way the budget process works is once the contract is finished, the one-time item is supposed to go. It's just a one-time item, so the budget is supposed to be replenished. But we did a second reduction instead of adding in the contract amount. So we're just correcting it. It's a technical adjustment.
Fine, it's just a lot of money. I was happy to make the reduction. I guess I can't be happy anymore. Okay, so you agree?
For that.
Okay, so we don't need to make any, so we
Just for clarification.
yeah, okay, fine. So that's it for this particular packet then, right? Thank you so much for coming today. I wish we could give you better news, but it's,
No, this is exciting. We're gonna
Yeah?
get pilot news update.
okay, we'll talk we'll talk next year. Thank you for coming. Next, we have the Business Center team come forward. This is item number 2. Just give it a second. And Mr. Ali, whenever you're ready, you can kick us off.
Sounds good. Let the team come down. So for the Business Center team, which is within CEX, you review their budget, but the overall budget is reviewed by the GO Committee for the Office of the County Executive. But nonetheless, the County Executive is recommending a reduction of 11.7% or $70,000, and this reflects a decrease in compensation adjustments only. They provide a summary of their accomplishments, which I've included on page 2, but they also have a presentation the annual report summarizes all of their work, and I've attached that in the packet as well. They don't receive their own OBET analysis, but the Office of the County Executive did and received a score of 7 with a sustained commitment to advancing racial equity and social justice. And there are no discussion items. So.
Thank you so much, President Foundy Gonzalez and members of the ECON Committee. This is going to be for the next several items. I just want to start by expressing how happy we are with your past support of the Business Center. I know we are very proud of the work they've done under Nadia Klut's leadership. They've really leaned in to a period of transition. As you know, last year we made some adjustments. We lapsed one position for half a year. There's another position we zeroed out. And the team has continued their high level of service. I'm happy to say they continue to reach thousands of businesses each year. They work with thousands of businesses through our support services NDA to help individuals start, sustain, and scale their businesses. They are working through changes in the RFP, in the open solicitation, moving our sole source non-competitive contracts to an open solicitation process, which enables us to use what once was unspent dollars encumbered in contracts for real services by new partners, giving others access to be able to support our community more geographically, more targeted to different populations, and addressing different needs in the lifespan of our companies. Also, this team continues to work with towards resolution of the RFP for our operator of our incubators, and they're working closely to support our 80 tenants across our 4 incubators to support their growth as they scale. And we talked last time about the support for the MOVE and SBIR grant programs, which occurs within the Business Center. And I just want to give them all a shout out by name. Nadia Klut, who is currently pulling double duty. You may know she's also acting regional director in Wheaton, but also Alicia Chavez, who has made a transition from the incubator team. She was our candidate and was promoted into the small business navigator position, which as you know has a structural responsibility for working with the folks like you just were talking to about improving services and access to our businesses. Also, the 3 liaisons, Patrice Cheatham, Daniel Karoma, and Marie Harvey. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go with them out into the field. If you haven't, we need to schedule time for you. I know in the past, Councilmember Glass has gone out with Marie Harvey, but we're more than happy to arrange so you can see what their day is like in the community. You met Derese Bigila, who is our manager for our grant program. You may not have met Richard Cisneros, who's our one remaining staff person in the incubators, and Stephanie Sawyer, who is she's the woman in the chair who manages all the administrative blizzard of action that occurs behind the scenes to make this function successful. So I'll stop there. I just want to pass it off to Nadia, see if she has anything to add.
Good afternoon, Chair Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, Vice Chair Balcom, Councilmember Sale and Glass. For the record, Nadia Clute, Business Center Manager. As you guys know, the Business Center goal has been to be able to support all the businesses here in the community. And I would like to highlight some of just the most important impacts. I know you guys have had a chance to review the annual report, which goes from January to December of 2025. When it comes to diversity and representation, some of the data that we were able to pull from the CRM data, it is the fact that the Business Center is supporting about 33% of the Black or African American business community, about 31% white Caucasian, which makes, part of the largest known segment, then following by about 17% of the Latin community and about 16% of the Asian community. There are definitely some growth trends that we have been able to point out, which is a positive shift based on the engagement that we're doing with the Black, African, or African American entrepreneurs here in the county, which represents about 36% of the new contacts that we established during 2025. As far as the 2026 plan, we do, Alicia, the Small Business Navigator, does plan on sending out a survey on an annual basis where we will be able to capture more demographics data. So we're hopeful that you guys will be able to see it on the next report. As far as the regional liaison and outreach, our business liaisons serve as the boots on the ground, providing the support. So the current regional coverage is Marie is covering East County, Daniel Korama is covering Mid-County, and Patrice is covering the Rockville Bethesda. As you guys can see, there are gaps on 2 of the regional areas of the county. At this point, we're currently in the finishing interview phase for a 4th liaison, which will be focusing in the App County region to ensure that we have more of a balanced coverage geographically. The business liaisons this year have transitioned based on an evaluation and tidying up the process internally, and the workload that they have is to do outreach of about 10 to 15 businesses on a weekly basis. So this could be new businesses, this could be existing businesses, this could be businesses that the business center have not had any interaction, or it could be businesses that we have touched base maybe 1-2 years ago, and we want to circle back to identify what are some of their needs. The liaisons don't only fulfill the role of doing outreach. They manage contracts. They help and facilitate move grant applications, review the entire documentation package, including site visits. They coordinate a lot of the ribbon cuttings, grand openings, county executive business visits, along with the logistical part of things. They also focus on the business center website and the inquiries that we get through the contact form. They are communicating with DPS, HHS, the Office of Procurement, and connecting businesses through the right path and assistant. And they also need to do some admin work to make sure that we're capturing all of that in the CRM system. Alicia, that plays a big role as the small business navigator. She continues on developing a regulatory guidance, being a legislative liaison, and being a resource also to the business liaisons. So our liaisons are advocating for all of the business community, and we're doing a lot of proactive field work, as you can see. By expanding our team this year into the App County, that will help us shift more of the coverage that it is needed in the App County region. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I have to say, I've seen the growth, how much the business center has improved. Especially in, I would say, the last couple of years, it has been very impressive. And I think it's one of the things that make Montgomery County so special. And not because I have stopped by and talked to staff, but because I have talked to businesses and I have talked to people who wanted to create businesses. And they have given me such a great feedback about your work. So I want to thank you for doing all that and for the care that you guys put into this. Because it's not people who are just being on a desk. I can tell that there are people who really want to ensure that we're helping our business community succeed. So thank you for that. And also the partnership that you have developed with the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation has been so crucial, so important, especially as we help them transform on their mission. I think that partnership has made a huge difference, not just for you, but for them too. So thank you for that.
I do want to call that out because we have monthly check-ins with the chambers. We have a phone call, and we have quarterly meetings. We just had one yesterday that the chamber organizes with all the chambers, the regional directors, ABS, others like the Business Center. So, and the point is to collaborate and share and move the interests of the business community forward.
Exactly, and communicate, because sometimes everybody has great ideas, but they're not talking to each other. And I think these meetings have been very, very helpful. And I'm telling you, I'm hearing it from people. So thank you for that. This is an easy one. We can just say yes and move on to the next item. But I don't want to. Yeah, is that good? Can we move on? Okay, without objection, we agree with the county executive recommendation. We're going to move on to the next item.
Great.
So, great job. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, interrupt. So yeah, item number 3 is the Small Business Support Services NDA. Same cast of characters. They manage these contracts. There was obviously a detailed discussion about this in December. Just to orient you, there's a change of about $646,000, which includes one shift that we want to recharacterize a little bit, and then the rest is related to compensation adjustments. There's also 2 positions being shifted from the incubators NDA into this NDA, but that's effectively net neutral because those same staff already are managed by the business center manager. So the budget increases to 1.922. There are 6 of the FTEs that are, again, managed through the business center included in this NDA. As you will recall, there is a new open solicitation process for providing business support services, and you can see the description starting on page 2. Starting first with the table 1 on page 2, you can see how much they're generally allocating to each of these solicitations. The main one being business cohort programs, which they hope to fund with about $750,000, and they'll take in applications and obviously select from there which providers will provide services, and they'll do that up to $750,000, and the same for the rest of the open solicitation programs. And they also have 2 smaller programs where they're going to have a local membership program and continue their cohort and pitch awards that they used to do through M&T Bank. County executive staff has also noted that they'll be providing the ECON committee with quarterly updates on the progress of this open solicitation. Starting on page 3, I have a description of what they're expecting to achieve with each of these programs for business cohort. It's basically cohort training. Interestingly, for all of the open solicitation, it's not just taking in general proposals that are priced with all the services. Rather, they're going to create a menu, and you can see the menu for business cohort programs on page 3 and 4. And basically, these are the services that you can bid to provide, and there's a fixed rate that you as the provider would receive for the amount that you do. So it's not, different contractors could be paid different rates for the same service. This is consistent. There's a very specific menu of what they would be doing and how much they'd be compensated for that. And that's true for each of the open solicitations. So business enrichment programs will be funded with up to $525,000 to support entrepreneurs, small businesses, and nonprofits through large business conferences, expos, networking events, training sessions, and things like that. And then the menu of services is provided on page 6 for business enrichment programs. They'll also be providing business support services up to $450,000 for things like business coaching, marketing consultants, accounting, and legal services. The menu of services is provided on page 7 and the prices that they compensate that with. They also want to provide $55,000 to support existing incubators with a flat fixed fee to be used for facility rental, utilities, and equipment expenses. This one I think was just a little unclear to council staff, so you may just want a little bit more information about what the plan is and their relationship to the incubators NDA, but there's not a suggestion for changing anything there. And then finally, the annual business conference and local membership program. So they want to start a conference, and they have estimated what that would cost. In terms of discussion items, obviously there may just be general information that you want about this new process. But, you know, we do a lot of, well, actually, on central staff. And so what we noticed in the shift of $223,000 was there were 4 contracts that were economic development related in CEX. We just discussed that in December. They are shifting that amount over, which makes sense. There were also contracts adding up to about $78,000 that were not necessarily related to economic development, that were just ending in FY26, and they're shifting that amount over. So technically speaking, that would be a reduce in CEX, and they're adding it to the Small Business Support Services. So just to account for every dollar, I think according to the Council President's approach, $77,836 would go on the reconciliation list. It's a small amount of money, but just pointing it out because we like doing that kind of thing. And that's it. Yes, yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask them to please answer some of the questions that Mr. Ali posted, because I think we all have the same questions. If you can please go over them, that would be great before I open it up.
I'm going to turn to my colleague, Ms. Clute.
So addressing the local incubator support and the 55,000 that are in the budget, that is mainly, so right now, as you guys know, there are 2 incubators that are operating within the county. We have the retail incubator that is run by the Rockville Economic Development, and then we have Crossroads Community Kitchen. So because they necessarily, once we reevaluated all the solicitations that we have put out, we identified that there is a need to support still the operations of the incubator itself that are supporting local businesses. So we are in the process of identifying what is going to be the internal process to set up an open solicitation model to support those facilities.
And to add to that, we are talking with Heather Breskin on the best model for managing the relationship with Crossroads. They are focused on getting folks into the food industry. It can be argued that food resiliency, they need a close relationship with them. So we'll be working with them, with Heather, to manage that transition. They don't quite fit the other open solicitations, so we're managing through it.
Yeah, so now going back into the transition of the open solicitations, which we discussed during the December session, is that part of this transition is we're pivoting from the legacy sole source contracts into a more competitive open solicitation to ensure that we have the highest return of investment based on what we're investing through these organizations to support the business community. The open solicitation not only allows for the organizations and partners we're already working with, but for local small businesses and other nonprofit organizations, part of the county and outside of the county, to be able to provide their expertise to Montgomery County businesses. The continuity of services, we're working very closely with our existing partners to ensure that there is a smooth transition, and the majority of our partners have already applied for the new models solicitation to ensure that they were still embracing the support that they have been providing. And that's why this, through the 2025 annual report, you can also see that we have highlighted the impact and the work that they have been doing supporting businesses. As far as the selection process for the open solicitation, there will be a committee which has been discussed, which involves the regional service center directors, because they are the ones that can identify and share what are some of the needs specific to their region. So collectively, along with the business center manager and team, we will then be able to deploy and identify, and the directors will have a voice to say, our community have a need for marketing, a need for cohort, a need for more food service-based support. There will be a quarterly feedback loop where the selection panel will meet quarterly to assess and to ensure that the evolving needs of the business community are being met. This also provides us the flexibility of task orders. So previous year model, all funds will be released by us issuing contracts July 1st. But through this model, not all funds will be immediately disbursed coming July 1st. We will be issuing a wide variety of task orders that will be on an annual basis, biannual or quarterly basis, depending on the need of the community, depending on the service level that they can provide.
And just to add, we believe this model gives us the flexibility to more strategically deploy the funds. We have great partners today that do great programs, and in no means are we entering into this process to end great programs that are successful. What we're doing is we're, with the available dollars you've provided, addressing the gaps. That's why we work with the regional directors. What's happening in East County? What's happening in Germantown? What's happening? What are the business communities and entrepreneurs where they are? How can we serve them with programming? And then from the companies that get qualified under the open solicitation to then go procure the services through task order.
That includes chambers, and which is what we talked about as a committee for the past 2 years, is opening the doors for others to be able to get government contracts.
Yes.
That was the whole point, and it's finally moving forward. So I'm very happy. I'm sorry, you have something else to say, but I needed to say that.
Yeah. So just to highlight kind of where we are at with the applications that we have received. So we have received 8 applications that are completely vetted. So that demonstrates that the system is working. That includes chambers. That includes 4 of new organizations. We have 13 other organizations that are new, that we have not done any work, that are interested, and that Stephanie Sawyer literally is taking the time with each of these organizations, hold them hand in hand, because compared to an RFP process, you submit your application, you get evaluated. If you're missing something, then you get put in the no list. No, she received the application, and if the application is missing any documentation, she will reach out to them, and she will work with them to make sure that they have the best possible option.
So, and when are you, so you have the applications that came in. When are you going to announce who got in? Because this is a big deal. This has never been done in this county before. I need the world to know that it was this committee.
So you're looking for when are we issuing the first task orders? How are we starting to populate the calendar? Absolutely. I hear you. And when we talk about 8, that's just for the cohort training. There were 8 companies that applied, 4 of whom are new, that have not received funding from us for cohort training. But yeah, we will. And the point is, this is an open process. So at any point in the year, someone new can come in and get qualified as a vendor. But yeah, we will get a calendar to you right away for the new year.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start with Council Vice President Balcom.
So thank you. Yeah, what's that expression? Great successes have many mothers, and yeah. So this is going to be a great success, and we're all going to take credit for it. So just a couple things, a list of things. So I love that the new organizations are applying. I think that one of the things that I want to make sure as you vet is that they have the capacity, right? Because we had that difficulty a few years back when some of these grants started, that capacity wasn't there. So I think that's important. I'm assuming that the eligibility is their nonprofit organizations. Is that the case?
They could be businesses or nonprofit.
Oh, okay. LLCs
yes.
too.
Yes.
Okay, great. Super to know. And then just a couple questions on the on page 2. So the cohort awards is 20,000. Are you doing that twice a year?
That's really nice.
Yeah. If you look at note A,
Which says
the bottom of
that,
page.
so that is the pitch competition.
Yes.
So what is happening is that we have realized that a lot of business really were looking forward to like a pitch competition. So we have developed, like recently we supported the Women's Business Center through their Women's Conference, and we provided funding for their pitch competition, only supporting Montgomery County businesses that participated in that. We are looking forward the exact same way to give opportunity to other organizations that whole different cohorts that might end up in a pitch competition to have some level of price.
Okay, that's great. I just, your note A didn't, the math in note A didn't match the amount in the 20,000. So just, okay. So I think we need to, that needs to match. Otherwise, somebody else might have the same question. And then the leftover. What is the leftover?
So all these numbers that we've given you are approximate,
Okay.
right? So there is flexibility in each category to go higher or lower based on the demand for the services offered. So one could say that's a flex built into the entire program.
I think flex is a better word than leftover. Leftover means let's take it.
That was my
Okay.
nomenclature. I'll fix that, sorry.
Great, thanks. And then I saw dollar signs in my eyes. And then the conference, I think that's a great idea. However, in the business enrichment programs, you have conferences in there too. So what is the difference between the conference that you would put on versus the conference that a vendor would put on?
So the conference that is through the enrichment program is to support the organizations that already do different business conference, like the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. They host their contractor summit. So it is a way to help to promote
So that
the
would be like
conference.
sponsorships for those.
It will work more of as a sponsorship.
Okay.
Compared to the main conference it could be one organization or a partnership of organizations that will come together to host more of a county-wide event.
And then the issue of rotating. What programs are you thinking about rotating on an annual basis?
Are you referring to the rotation between organizations?
Yes.
Yes. So there are a couple different things when it comes to that. So we're going to be looking at equity and capacity because on a rotating basis, we want to make sure that we prevent a vendor to burn out, to make sure that we have multiple qualified firms. Sometimes it might be the fact that App County might say, we need support services for XYZ. So we will identify which organization is next in line to provide those services, but that have also agreed to provide services in the App County. So through the pre-qualification area, each organization can say the areas that they want to serve physically.
Okay. So and that's great. It provides more one-to-one resources. I guess my only, for the cohort programs, or maybe other programs as well, there's a learning curve that happens with these contracts, and a learning curve and a ramp up for the effectiveness of programs. So I think that I would be very cautious about which grants you're rotating and when. I understand that that it's good to rotate or good to open it up, but I also think that you're going to lose relationships, or you're going to lose just the learning curve on that. So just for caution on that. And then I don't know about this idea of, are you going to be ready to start on day one, or is there some kind of a lapse period that we could look at?
So we have already been working with a lot of these organizations, especially with our existing partners. A lot of them were already in planning stage. I have had a discussion with all of them that we're going to be meeting by mid-May to have a discussion as to what is their plan for the new fiscal year, what is the capacity, so that we start planning some of those trainings so that there is no gap come July 1st.
Okay, because I'm really happy with this program. I think it's really an evolution of what the Business Center can be and is. I've been a supporter again before I even got here. Right, I think you're doing a fantastic job. So, so I just, I'm a little concerned, or doubtful is too strong of a word, but this is a really big change, and it's May 1st is tomorrow. So I think it's just important that when we look at the $4 million, or no, wrong one, $2 million, $3 million, that it's you're ready to go. So that's just a comment, unless you have an answer. I do have questions about the staff positions, but I don't know if we got there yet. Okay, I'll hold mine. That's it. That's all.
Do you want to speak now? Councilmember Sell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the updates. When you mentioned that you have 8 applicants, how many actual roles are available for those 8? Are we awarding 8 contracts, or is there space for less?
So how it works with the open solicitation is a pre-qualifying. So there are 8 pre-qualified organizations that meet the criteria to provide business support services.
Okay.
Each organization has provided a wide range of support services that they can provide, along with the capacity. Then our job between the business center and the regional directors is to identify what task orders we want to deploy. So all organizations, once finishing through the procurement process, they will have a contract. There is no dollar amount associated, and then the business center will release task orders. So there is capacity for 20 organizations, 50 organizations, as many organizations as that want to apply. It is more a matter as to working on identifying what are the needs of the business community, but also retaining some of the core support services that the business center and the existing supported organizations have already been provided.
Okay. And so are we hoping that we will be able to serve more businesses through this new model?
Yes,
Okay.
because through this model of solicitation, we are also requiring for, like, as an example, cohort series training, that they minimum need to have 20 businesses, while before the previous model did not have certain level of requirement for that.
Okay. And then how are we ensuring that duplication won't be avoided with the actual businesses that are being served?
Well, businesses will take advantage of as many resources that are available in the county, but through the quarterly meetings that we're having with the organizations, we are able to communicate and see some of the crossover of clients, of businesses that might be taking advantage of all the cohort trainings.
No, I mean, we want them to get as many trainings, but how are you going to track and report duplicated businesses that are captured in this?
So the organizations, in order for them to get paid, they have to provide reports as to who attended, the name of the business. We're going to be ensuring that these are Montgomery County-based businesses or residents. So that is how we're going to be checking all of that information.
So businesses are going to be providing services up front, and you're paying them after they've completed these cohorts, or?
The organization's correct.
Okay, so you're reimbursing.
Yes.
Okay, and then how are we evaluating these new contractors for success? Because we created this new model because it was hard to track the success and outcomes for the current contractors. So what metrics?
So
what's the rubric?
So we are standardizing all the reporting that
Okay.
is, so from collecting demographics data to business information, business status, if it is a business that was registered or not. So we're going to start capturing some of that information, which is going to help us create a standardized reporting throughout all the support services that we're going to provide.
Well, that's just basic information. I'm talking about what are we capturing to show success? to show that this is actually working. I mean, we could talk to any number of businesses. You know, we go to chamber events, we all shop in person, we can go to businesses, we can talk to them, but what does success look like and how are we measuring the success?
So there are going to be follow-ups, there are going to be annual reports, and the point
I
of
know,
this
but what are we
is,
looking at?
is also for the business center to capture that information so that the business liaisons and through the annual survey that we plan on having, that we're able to start capturing the growth of these businesses.
So we haven't come up with what that survey will entail yet?
We are in the process. Alicia, as the Small Business Navigator, has been assigned to that task. Happy to connect if you would like to have some level of input as to what we're drafting and where we're looking to collect.
Yes, I think because in order to show success, you have to have the pre and post survey results to see how engagement with this tax funded investment is benefiting not just the business, but the county's economy. So whether it's their bottom line, the amount of jobs or contracts they've gotten with the county, we need to see how this money is, you know,
And also,
multiplying.
just to add that we are also requiring the organization to do a pre and post survey so that we're able to capture and start seeing if there is any difference and what is the improvement and what areas they are improving.
Okay.
And thank you, Councilmember Sales, for this question. Because as you heard the other day, we do track move recipients after into the future. Are they still there? Are they successful for incubator graduates? We track them and continue to track how many employees they've added. Are they still in existence? What's their status? So we get you. And in working with all these different partners, it's important for us to have a standard set of questions and a cadence for follow-up.
Yes.
So that is on our minds too.
And I'm glad you mentioned the incubators because when we were on the 7th floor, we talked about how are we monetizing these incubators and whatever they're producing and whether they're growing their footprint. Do we know how many are actually staying in the county versus how many have left since coming through the program? Do we have any information about that?
I'll have that spreadsheet up for the next item.
Is the next item?
Oh, next one. Yeah. Thank you. See, I'm eager to hear this. Okay, thank you.
Great questions. Thank you so much. Let's focus right now on the shift that we have in page 8. The community-based contracts from the county executive to small business support service NDA. Can we address those? Those are the questions that you guys have. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the decision point is whether you agree with council staff to sort of split this amount, shift 145, and then place 77,836 either on the reconciliation list or just reduce it altogether.
You don't want to speak on this? No?
Okay. I know we're going to talk about the incubator next, but this shift, just tell me more about, because the incubator is going into a contract, right? And so the FTEs are shifting over to this program. Is that the general idea?
Yes, that is because we want to make sure that we don't leave the current staff unemployed. There is a shift to the business center to fulfill a business liaison role.
Okay, so, and I sincerely appreciate that that there are people in those positions, but I don't see it as a shift because it's not as if the function isn't moving from the incubator to the small business NDA, because a vendor is going to do the work over in the incubator. So we're going to incur costs to run the incubator. So it's really adding 2 positions to the NDA, not shifting positions. We're shifting people, we're shifting the individual employee, but the positions are no longer, it's like we're deleting the positions in the incubator and adding 2 positions here. So I don't, Mr. Ali, do you?
No, I understand completely, and we can recharacterize this if that's the wish of the council to do a reduce and an addition. I will say, I think this was discussed last year. Yeah. So there was that one position that was vacant within the incubator's NDA, and you transitioned it out when you timed, when you thought the contractor would come on board. And I think it was explicitly discussed that this would also lead to sort of an enhancement in the business center because 2 of those staff. But to your point, it's still budget from a budget perspective.
So, and I think it's a great enhancement. We need I'm assuming you need the FTEs to do all the new work. So it's, for me, it's just a recharacterization of a shift, an addition versus a shift.
And it's a complicating moving, the running discussion we've had for the last year. At last year when we came before you, we had 1 vacant position in the small business. One of the navigators positions were vacant. We had 2 full-time people in the incubators and 1 full-time person working with Judy Costello in her program. We agreed to lose one of the 3 filled positions, and through the and agreed not to hire the liaison until mid-year. So that was kept vacant. But I hear what you're saying. We are recruiting for the vacant liaison position now, and we're just recognizing that there's 1 person left in the incubators. Although Alicia still continues to split her time, we can discuss it more. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on where we go with it.
Okay, and then just briefly, the fund balance. Just a question: are there any fund balances out there as a remnant of the contracts or the contracts that we currently have in place?
At this point, because of the billing frequency of each organization, the balance will vary just like last year.
So what will we recoup those balances? What's going to
I
happen?
actually did ask, sorry, I should have put this in this section. I asked OMB about this, and they're not projecting any rollover from FY26. So all the money that was approved in previous fiscal years that was still unspent by those organizations is projected to be spent by the end of FY26. So there wouldn't be any carryover of a contract.
Okay, thanks. I just worry about the organizations just spending money to spend the money.
I understand. As we move to the new model, the old contracts are, we're moving on. And OMB is very, very assertive about coming to us and liquidating unspent balances, which means the money returns to the reserves.
Sure. Okay, thanks. That's it for me.
So unclear. So we agree with the county executive's recommendation, but now the how is being framed with a shift.
Yes.
So you're gonna correct that before it gets to full council.
Yeah. So I guess would it just so for on the 2.1 shift of the 2 positions, I get the implication is that those 2 positions would go on the rec list. Just want to confirm that
Yes.
understanding. Okay. So yes, I can make that adjustment and bring it to full council. Okay. Would the committee have the same view of the previous item also?
Which one?
The 1.1 and just adjusting the 2.2 and breaking it up. I mean, you don't have to. I just pointed it out. So.
Are you? You're fine with that one. We're fine with that one.
As in with the council staff to put 77 on the rec list, or just? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Are there any more questions on this item?
So it will be from the incubator NDA. It would be or reduce or eliminate the position, and then it's an enhancement to this NDA for business liaisons.
Is that clear? That's good, right? Okay, making sure.
I just need to get with OMB and with Bilal because there is a body in one of these. There's two people, and so we had to figure out as we're recruiting for positions that we're not getting caught with a lot of staff people and having to let people go on July 1st.
So this is coming to us next week, so if you guys can coordinate that by
Absolutely.
tomorrow.
Yeah, that needs to be noted on the rec list because I think it's just really important. Yeah, it has to be because it's unlike other new positions that don't have staff. These are not vacant new positions.
Yeah, so we'll note that. So yeah, we'll put 2 FTEs on the rec list, but we'll make sure which ones are filled and note that on the reconciliation list.
All right, we're
Understood.
clear now. Do you have questions?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Councilmember Sells.
Thank you. So the positions are only funded for half the year. The 77,000, is that?
No, sorry, that was just, so they're shifting economic development contracts from the Office of the County Executive. So there was like the Purple Line contract, a few others there. Those are economic development related, so it makes sense to shift them here because all economic development contracts are consolidated within Small Business Support Services NDA. However, 77 of what's being shifted was not for economic development contracts. So it's not really a shift because it wasn't for the same purpose that SBSS NDA uses it for. And so we just wanted to clarify that it's just sort of free money that they're adding here, but based on the council president's approach, it would go on the rec list.
So the money is just being added into the NDA
That's
fund?
right.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So we're not hiring any more people because I see 2 additional positions from last fiscal year. It's going from 4 staff to 6 staff.
Yeah, so that's what I just discussed was item 1.1. The 2 positions is items 2.1 on page 9. So those are 2 separate items. And so yes, those are the 2 new positions that the committee would recharacterize as enhancements here.
For the 222.
No, for the 327. On page
2.1.
9.
Okay, the 2 program manager positions
That's right.
from the incubator.
That's right.
And these positions are going to become community liaisons.
Yeah, they'll just become
outreach.
part of the business liaisons that the business center has and go all around the county.
Okay, and so what are their roles going to be? Is it going to take over the up-county liaison position, or? Because you said that you didn't have anyone for that role.
We really need to do some work because we did eliminate a position that reports to because you were agnostic last year. You said you had 3 positions, 2 in incubators, 1 working for Judy. Eliminate one of them, and so we zeroed out probably one of them, and that left 2. But there's still a need. There's still the position. One position is needed to support Judy, and the other position is a current incubator employee who would transition to the business center, continue to have a role with the incubators, but also work as a business liaison. So we're happy to chart this out and get something to you between now and the council session.
Yes, because, I mean, it's a significant increase in this budget for 2 additional staff. If I'm looking at the right, I'm looking at page 1, and what I see is 1.7 for fiscal year 26 with 4 staff, and then for this year, I see 1.9 with 6 staff. So that's, 200,000 for
So-
6 full-time employees.
That is just the operating cost. The personnel cost is 2 lines above that on page 1.
Yeah,
So you see that?
it's double for
Yeah.
6 for 2 additional people. How do we get there?
It's
'Cause it
not
goes from
double. It's
5
about 327 plus 587. I think is 1.01 million.
Yeah, for 2 extra
It's in 90.
staff members. So
If I may, the 2 FTEs that you're seeing in SBSS, those are just relabeled shift, which is the discussion that we just had. But these are already
well, I'm
funded
just looking. I don't
in the
know,
incubator.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. All I'm looking at is what's on chart 1, and it's going from 4 full-time employees to 6 full-time employees with a 28% increase. So I'm just trying to figure out what are these people doing that. So I just think it's going to have to be better organized for next week?
I can make sure to clarify. I
Okay.
can confirm, on background that, everyone's got the right information and make sure to bring that to full council.
Okay, because when I hear that we have business navigators that are in which 3 parts of the county now?
So we have Mid-County, East County, and Bethesda, Rockville, Bethesda.
Okay, and in Bethesda, we have the Friendship Village, we have the Business Urban Partnership, we have a lot of resources. And when I hear that Up County where it's majority diverse businesses have nothing, and I'm
It's-
not sure what's going on.
It is not that they have nothing, it's that there is not an active point of contact for App County, but we're still serving App County businesses.
I mean, but who's visiting the businesses on a day-to-day
The
basis?
business liaisons do rotate depending on projects, depending if Councilmember Balcom or the Regional Service Center Director reaches out to us and says, hey, there is a program, there is a business need, I will deploy the business liaisons.
I
Up
know,
County.
but that's only if we call you. Businesses up county don't know about this service of people coming to visit and talk about the grants and
And then
other
that's why
opportunities.
That's why when Alicia transitioned to the small business navigator position, that created the one vacancy, and that's why the priority was to hire a business liaison for the App County.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why we're prioritizing Bethesda over the up county. Like, why wouldn't we deploy a navigator to the up county? Who made that decision?
That's exactly why we want to shift or have the next navigators dedicated to Up County. Jake Adler with the Up County Regional Services Center has been helping the team filling the gap. He's everywhere working with businesses, and we work very closely with him. But you're right, that is a need. They're the highest concentration of retail storefront businesses in the county is in that Rockville Pike corridor between Rockville and Friendship Heights. So it's very important to us to hit the highest concentration of businesses that are all demographic, gender and income levels. There are lots of mom and pops in downtown Bethesda. But I do hear you with the collaboration in Silver Spring District. The business liaison works very closely with the Tacoma Village, with the Silver Spring Urban District, and with the Long Branch Main Street, just to collaborate, to do outreach. So
When we're thinking about how much it costs to lease space in Bethesda versus Gaithersburg and Germantown, I feel like there's a need that's being overlooked up county. And so I would just want to have a better understanding of when that's going to be fulfilled and how we're targeting the businesses that we are connecting with in every part of the county. Because I'm not clear on what the directive is for these business navigators and how they are deployed into the community and how they're targeting the businesses that they reach. So if I can get some more information, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to the update from all of you before next week, okay? We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is number 4, Incubator Programs Non-Departmental Account. I think it's the same folks on the table.
Sorry, just for formality, just to confirm, 4-0, right, for both items?
What do you say?
Was it a 4-0 unanimous
Yes,
vote? Just-
yes.
Sorry, just to
yes,
check.
yes, it was. We just need more clarity in the packet ahead of next week. That's all. So, Mr. Ali, if you can please kick us off.
Thank you. Okay, so this item number 4 is the Incubator Programs NDA. Same cast of characters again. The county executive is recommending a decrease. This is the shift of those 2 positions to the Small Business Support Services NDA, as well as an elimination of that program manager position that's just been discussed. The FY27 recommended budget would be $4.13 million, which is an increase of 8.4%. Obviously, as you know, the incubator programs provide the management of the incubators and a variety of services. You can see on Table 1 what the operating expenses are used for. So there's a rental lease for the Germantown Innovation Center, a condo fee for the Rockville Innovation Center, some operating expenses, and then left over, and I apologize, there's a note missing under Table 1, but in FY25, about 1.23 million of what I called leftover was spent on consultant services, specifically JLL, to provide the property management services of the incubators. For FY26, you had programmed in an additional 2 million so they could transition to the third-party manager, and what you see on that leftover line is what could have been spent on that manager up to that amount. And then for FY27 recommended, they can spend up to 3.4 million, and obviously that depends on the negotiations with the contractors that have responded to the RFP, for which they can provide a progress update. I don't have one in the packet. In terms of budget discussion items, there's been discussion of the two positions, so if the committee's okay, I can move on to the next item, which is item 2. And I actually have a table here, or a chart, or a slide rather, thank you, just to explain the options a little more clearly than what's in the packet. So as you all know, just on background, the county executive has proposed transitioning to this third-party manager for incubators. They'll provide more services that are currently being provided because they also have technical expertise in sort of incubating businesses. However, the plan was that the third-party manager would be under contract by January. That was the expectation of the council. As of the writing of this packet, there was no update on hiring a contractor. So not any judgment on the need for a third-party manager or whether that would be a good idea, but just from a fiscal budget perspective, there are a few options given the status quo. You could approve the $2 million again, which is the same services budget for the incubators NDA. And this basically allows them to spend the FY26 money, which has been encumbered when they put the RFP out. And so then they would spend that, and they basically have an extra year's worth of funding. Maybe they enter into a multi-term contract, whatever, but basically what you've approved in the past would just continue and hopefully begin at the start of the fiscal year. Alternatively, you could reduce the FY27 funding because they have a year's worth of that $2 million for the third-party manager from FY26. That would give you approximately a year's worth of funding for this manager, and then in FY28, depending on your evaluation of it, you could choose to fund it again or not. But if you wanted to keep funding it, there would have to be an additional $2 million in there. And this is, you may just want to make sure that the amount would be $2 million. They may have a slight different number of what they would expect for 1 year's worth of funding. The third option is reduce both funding. So don't approve the $2 million for the third-party manager in FY27. And the county executive could formally relinquish the amount from FY26 which would then accrue to the reserves, or your use of reserves as part of balancing the budget. That's also sort of inherent in option 2, where if you reduce FY27 funding and for whatever reason they choose not to pursue it, then that amount would just go back to the general fund. Option 3 just kind of gives you an option to formalize that and account for that number in the reserves if you choose to not fund the third-party manager anymore. Again, no preference or no judgment or analysis on the need for a third-party manager, just laying out the options given the delay in the process.
Thank you for that. Let me just jump in on this one. I have been following this particular issue for a while and having conversations with the county executive team on this. I think we should go with option 2 here, but I would love to hear from you if you agree and how could that work, and explain that to the committee, please.
Thank you, President Fana-Gonzalez, for that question. We've provided some updates and have updated staff on the status of the selection. We're close, and I know that's until there's an announcement. It's that's what you're looking for. And I'd have to. It has been a long process. There is a tremendous pressure to do this right and to pick the right vendor who can execute. And so there are a lot of discussions that go into that with a preferred vendor. to make sure they are ready to go. They're going to do exactly what you want them to do for the amount you've asked them to do. So that has taken time to work through those details. So that means you have provided $2 million encumbered in the current fiscal year for this contract. We do envision that we'll need the entire amount next fiscal year. Should we sign the contract, hypothetically next week, we would need that full funding, and we would need the whatever front funding or transition funding that gets us to open doors and a transition on July 1st. So there is an amount that would be liquidated and returned to the reserves in FY26 regardless. I worry that cutting the funds next year means that there is a higher barrier. Next year is going to prove to be as challenging as this year, and we would be competing to continue a contract. If it's successful, hopefully that will sell the next council on supporting. But that's the barrier that we'll have to cross next spring under that scenario.
But are you still looking at this slide that went away? You still with option 2? Can we? Oh, yes,
Yeah.
now.
I think
Yeah, no, but I wanted him to see it. So now I see here.
I think the delta is we anticipate needing at least 500,000 for the transition. For if there are costs regarding, because when someone starts, it's not a straight reimbursement. They'll need to hire their team. They'll need to bring in the whatever materials they need to begin the programming. And we expect the programming to start in the beginning of June. So it's a 13 months for programming, and this $2 million was. I'll back up. So we have UPRA is funding $2 million for enhanced programming and support of our tenants.
And let me remind the committee, it was so hard to get the money. We even had a tour. We went to Frederick, we went to Baltimore City.
Right.
We lobby your colleagues to get those votes, to get that funding. And the whole purpose is to ensure that we are working with our community to develop the next generation of business owners. I felt that I needed to say that.
Thank you, and your support has been greatly appreciated. You had the OLO report 2 that showed here are the different models, and here's where we're behind. And appreciate the support that got us to this point. And so you provide the $2 million to provide those services that help a business grow. And there is funding already in the budget for facilities, for managing, taking care of the facilities, paying the utilities, paying the rent. So, that chunk is also part of this contract. So this contract is envisioned to be the enhanced services and the day-to-day management, which is currently overseen by one county person and our current partner that is helping with the facility needs. So so with that said, we do expect that there are needs if we sign next week and there's a start in June, that there'll be a need for more funding than the $2 million.
And the more funding that so I can follow. So the more funding that you're talking about, the $500,000 that you're referring to, that will go into the rec list, correct? If we agreed.
You would just reduce the FY27 by 1.5 million instead of 2 million. Although I think you would want to maybe characterize that 500 then as a one-time expenditure, potentially.
Yes.
Yeah, right, yeah. Because you're not providing ongoing funding in FY27, just the one time to get the contractor up front. So for the 12 months plus this sort of starting fee, that's one time, and then you're going to evaluate in FY28 whether it would be ongoing, and then you'd appropriate an ongoing amount using this approach.
So and that's our bare minimum to have a contractor on board, start, and to fulfill all next year is the 2.5 million, the 2 plus the 500,000 from the current, and I see how you've structured this because you want to give yourself, of course, more flexibility in the next fiscal year. It's doable. It's something that we'll just have to, the next executive will have to argue for in his next budget, that to add the funding in to continue it.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for questions on this item. Was there something else from your presentation? No? No? Okay, beautiful. Anybody else has questions? Oh, Ms. Costello, you have something to say?
No, I was just clarifying that we're all thinking the same thing, that the encumbered $2 million for this fiscal year, $1.5 million would be released back to the general fund and your smart decisions on how to use it, but $2 million would be, would not be on a rec list or anything, would be definite as moving forward for the next fiscal year.
What I'm hearing is the encumbrance this year remains. Next year's budget would be reduced so that we would have the resources for the contract for the next 13, 14 months. And then the next executive would have to propose an increase of whatever the delta is to in their budget for 28.
Okay, that's why I was trying to, because we had talked different things before. So that's the opposite, but that could still work, basically. You're still thinking.
Okay, and that's the recommendation from is number 2 here in front of us.
These were just options for your consideration.
I know, but it's here in
yes.
front of us,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
that's
easy
right,
for
that's right.
everybody to read, and we can be all on the same page.
I just want to point out again that whatever we do, whatever we don't spend in the current fiscal year is liquidated and returned to the reserves. So in that way, it is available to you, but it's in that bucket. And I want to turn to my colleague from OMB to make sure I'm saying it right.
Yeah, I think the discussion prior to this meeting today was kind of what Mr. Hartman is explaining. The $2 million, it has been encumbered for FY26. So the approach, or one of the approaches, I guess, that we considered is the release of the encumbered amount. Unencumbered 1.5 or 1 million, whatever the remainder was, so that returns to the reserves in 26, but then that the appropriation moving into 27 will remain the same as the base budget.
Thank you. So first, I want to say we have to fund this. Yeah. It's important. We've been talking about it for years, and we're almost there. And so, yes, and we need to do it at a level that makes a difference. And so, appreciate that. So I guess now it's just the mechanism for how we do it, right? I think it's probably cleaner for you use the 26 money to start the contract, and then the remainder goes back into the general fund, and then we appropriate $2 million for 27. That's probably the cleanest way, but that really doesn't help us next week with the budget, right? And so, sorry, I'm looking at myself. I'm trying to. Once that goes off, we get like, oh.
Leave it up. Yes.
So.
It's not in the packet.
So just tell me in terms of how much money, if the contract is signed next week and you're thinking it's going to be signed soon, how much money do you think you need in FY26?
I think we need the $2 million for a full year, and then we need the equivalent of 3 months, which is the 500.
Okay. Yeah, I would suggest what the Council President said is that we appropriate 1.5 in 2027. Leave the $2 million, leave the FY26 money intact, right? And Yeah, I think that's what we need to do.
Is that clear?
Yes, so the committee would
Yeah,
reduce the budget by 1.5 million for FY27.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that equals 350, right? So OMB needs to help us out here.
And the other thing is that we're about, the other thing is that we're signing if we're in negotiating and we're signing something, we don't want to, Mr. Hartman already said the intent is to sign something, but we don't want to scare somebody off by the uncertainty. To answer your question, Councilmember Balcom, for FY26, the expectation is if someone were starting June 1st, you would need a $500,000 for and then $2 million still for the next fiscal year. So whether 1.5 is released from this year or something from next year, but clearly this is not like picking up a folder and handing it off to a new person. There are 80-some companies with an ongoing basis, a lot of expectation, and that's been part of the challenge in this process is that we're asking for a lot for things that have not been done before. So whatever it is, we're not asking for more than we need for the next fiscal year, which is 2.5 million between now and the end of that fiscal year. But I also think we should think about the certainty as folks are looking on both tenants and offerers at the process.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. I think you're right on that.
Which will mean, and I'm going to turn it to Councilmember Glass, I just need clarity right now. That will mean that from FY26, you are taking $500,000, right? And then for FY27, we're saying we're moving the money that was appropriated to us. We're moving only $1.5 million because we're taking 500 now. But that means that we need to add another 500 million to the FY27. So that the money because we're moving money, right? So the FY27, we need new $500 million. So that new money comes to
500,000.
Yeah. That new money has to go to the rec list, right? Because we're not shifting at that point. No?
No, it's
service. You think, okay.
I want to,
I want to say yes, but.
sorry, I just want to let OMB chime in and I'll maybe restate my.
Corey Orlowski with OMB. How many staff does it take to change a light bulb here? Right. So the question really is, are you treating the $2 million that would be the expense an ongoing expense? If that is the preferred methodology, you would want to make sure that 27 has $2 million in it. Right now, because 26 has the $2 million, it's baseline. For 26, if the understanding is that only 500,000 is necessary, we can release $1.5 million to the bottom line.
That's it.
That's it.
I agree.
And $2 million remains in the base budget. Yes,
That was clear. Thank you for coming up front.
you are quite welcome.
Councilmember Glass, do not complicate this more.
No, I'm not going to complicate it. I support where we are. I'm not typically a fan of rolling over as we are, but I understand the situation that we are in. And this has been something we've been talking about for a very long time. And I trust the executive team in that we are very close to making this a reality. And the reality is that this sector needs our help. And we need to continue investing, and that is the only way that we will grow from the third largest life sciences hub to the second and to the first. But I have a technical question. Well, the question is, what is the expectation of these businesses that we are incubating? And I don't want to take us off track here. It is absolutely relevant to this, and perhaps we have another work session on it, but I think as we are investing these tax dollars into these incubators and into these companies, we should have an understanding of what the expectation therein is.
From the businesses.
Correct.
Because there's the scope that we put into the RFP that we want the contractor to do, but I'll leave it to.
Correct.
Ms.
So,
Castillo.
so the businesses have an expectation that a third-party operator, any of the offerers that may include the incumbent, will be coming in and enhancing the facilities and the programming. And when we say programming, it's not just community building, education, networking events, but when Mr. Hartman was saying this might start in June, it includes the technology assessment and one-on-one coaching and promotion. They all have been told that the county executive and county council want to bring more resources to them. We surveyed them in September. We're about to survey them again now. What types of resources would help you? And besides customers and capital, which all businesses would like, they were very specific on CHIPS design software, CNC for medtech, 3D printing, regulatory. So we do have a good sense of that. And the only other thing I'll say, council member, is in anticipation of a change, because right now the tenants are writing their license agreement checks to the county. That will change and go to a third party. We've written the tenants, I think at least twice, that we expect there to be a change with the enhanced program facilities and to whom their license agreements will be paid. And we started shortening the agreements from the typical 1 year to 6 months to make it easier for a new landlord equivalent to make the transition. So they all are anxiously awaiting the change.
So those are requirements of participation. What about success? That as they participate and they are fruitful in their entrepreneurial endeavors, what happens there?
So we do expect, we've already talked about, we've been running this on a pretty lean staff. We do expect that as we have professional experts spending more time with them, that the success that has been almost organic will increase. The number of jobs, the amount of funding, the number of success stories. The most successful story that we have since we were here last year is that our Celux, a company in our innovation center before I was with the county, before most of us were, 2014, was there for 2 years, graduated, moved to commercial space. 10 years later, they just were sold to Gilead Biosciences for $7.5 billion. So we consider that success, but it's not overnight, and the resources necessary aren't overnight. And I know Ms. Clute just talked about the retail incubator and the others working on a different type of small business, equally important. But these advanced technology businesses are mostly starting with pre-revenue, and our support, both services and facility, has been cited as key to helping them grow. I do know you're going to want to know about demographics.
Well, but before you go there,
Yep.
more of my questioning is essentially that as they graduate, what is the expectation that they stay in Montgomery County? What is the mechanics and the financials of their success? Not simply growing so large that they get bought out, which is wonderful for them, but wanting to make sure that we also benefit in other ways than already stated. And again, this is a longer conversation, and I think it's fair to say that as we undergo this program and get it off the ground and see it is successful, we'll continue refining probably how it operates and what those expectations are. And so I'll leave it be now, right? But certainly things to work through as we see it bearing fruit.
And Councilmember Glass, appreciate the questions. From our historical list of 42 graduates, all but 5 have remained in Montgomery County.
Great. Thank you.
And part of the the agreement that we had with you, with all the different meetings that we have had on this, was that once we have the contractor helping us with the incubators, we were going to have sessions to go over their success and see how we could make some changes as the work evolved. So all that was part of this deal to sign on this effort. And I don't want to lose that conversation. I know that happened a while back. It feels like ages ago, but it was just last year when we approved this. And the reason why we haven't come back is because you haven't hired that partner yet. But it will happen next week, as hopefully.
So the other key thing that we said is we want to leverage the investment the county's made in these innovation
Yes.
centers, not only for the tenants in there and who we recruit, but for all the other innovators around the county. And that takes, that will be through some of the sessions and things that you described.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back to council staff can you read out the agreement that has been discussed with our friends in the
Well,
back?
I just think that I'm frustrated with myself because I actually had a fourth option here that spelled out exactly what OMB said, but I removed it because it doesn't actually help with the question that you're answering to Councilmember Balcom's point earlier, right? What's option 2, and maybe OMB wants to provide an assist here, but option 2 is use all of the FY26 dollars and give them FY27 dollars to support the $2.5 million. That would be $2.5 million. What they're saying is give them $2 million of FY27 and use 500 of what was in FY26, and then that's relinquished. But if you do it that way, that $2 million from FY27 can't be spent on other elements on FY27 budgets. That's the difference. Of course, the option does create this thing that next year you'd have to fund it again because it's not part of the base budget, but that's the policy choice that we're presenting.
The relinquished $1.5 million from the current year, FY26, would fall to fund balance, which would mean it becomes undesignated general fund reserves that is part of the solution that is in constructing the 27 budget.
Yes, but unless we have a savings plan, we don't actually account for it as part of this overall thing. And that's my point. Like, yes, it's relinquished, but only after all the budgeting is done. So if you want to account for it, then he has to either formally submit a savings plan for FY26, but I think this is a cleaner option where you're doing a one-time funding with $2 million in FY26 and $500.
We need to protect this money. So what's the solution?
So here we go. OMB and the executive branch is due to submit the third quarter analysis by May 8th or 9th. If this assumption is part of that analysis, it will be reflected in the balance, the projected year-end fund balance within the third quarter analysis submission, and therefore available for use.
I'm just concerned about timing. This is coming, you said May 8th, this is coming to full council. I think I put it on Wednesday. So that's May 6th. So you guys are going to have to hustle and work it out because we worked so hard to ensure this money was taken care of. And is that possible? Okay.
Sure. The only thing I'll follow up with our staff is that we would need some kind of formal
Yes.
agreement that the $1.5 million can be accounted for as part of reserves for the FY27 budget. As long as we could get that in writing from the CE side, we can make this work.
Okay.
That can be done.
Okay, by Monday at the latest. All right, perfect. So I think we're done with this item. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for coming. We still have one more. The last item for today's agenda relates to our, give me 1 second. BioHub, Maryland, a Montgomery County non-department account. If you're here for this item, please come. Okay. You support? Okay, on the record. Do you need, are you okay?
Just briefly mentioning the inflationary adjustment is required by the MOU. It's not part of the inflationary adjustment that is voted on budget-wide. And I will point out that they do have a plan to achieve financial self-sufficiency by the end of the MOU term, although they make a case for additional county funding
When you
after
say
that.
they, are you referring to the Maryland Tech Council?
Yes, sorry, BioHub, which is the Maryland Tech Council. And
Thank you for being here. Okay, with that, you're going to turn it to Michelle. Would you like to kick us off then? Thank you.
I would love to, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Councilmember Sales. Good to see you all. It's great to be back here, especially since we just finished talking about investment into this industry. So good timing on our part. Hopefully everybody's having a great spring. I just want to talk a little bit about, if it's okay, kind of where we are in that industry sector right now, because that has shifted since we sat in this chair last year, and our expectations, not only for the program, but the industry and life sciences and biotech overall, has shifted a little bit based on administrative policies outside of our control, if you know where I'm going with that. But there has been significant policy changes, especially this past year. The NIH grant reductions, the FDA layoffs, and slowed drug approval processes, DOGE. At the state level, we've had PDAB, tech tax impacts on life sciences. And what all of that has done, right, it was a really volatile year, I guess, policy-wise for the industry. It's resulted in a reduced hiring in Maryland overall, and specifically in life sciences. And I don't need to tell you how tens of thousands of Marylanders, most of them living right here in Montgomery County, had suffered from some of those decisions, and some of them are still suffering. Montgomery County, you have this headwind right now that you are the hardest hit jurisdiction in America based on these policy assumptions. And the county's unemployment rate has gone from 2.5% to 4.8% in just 1 year. And the labor participation rate, which we know is more important even than the unemployment rate, is nearly down by 12,000 workers. Those are people that have given up looking for employment at this point in time. So with that, having us in that spot in Maryland, we are also in the spot of sort of a national competition when it comes to, as was stated earlier by Councilmember Glass, as being the third largest biotech ecosystem in the country. And of course, we would want to be the first largest in the country. Here's the significant issue. Over the course of the last year, there has been major announcements of major investment in states outside of Maryland. Virginia, which I think we can all agree, we do not consider a biotech state, landed over $13 billion in the course of a couple of weeks of new investment from AstraZeneca, Eli Lilly, and Merck, mainly due to some policy differences and incentive differences that were there. North Carolina had a $10 billion investment in 2024, and Pennsylvania also had increases in the investments in their states. And so Maryland has to continue investing in these industries that are, according to Governor Moore, the lighthouse industries, to be able to make sure that we can continue to grow and expand on what we do best here in Maryland. And one of the ways to do that is a homegrown workforce. And we've had this conversation before, and being able to do that. But there may be a shift in that, and I have to be really honest with you, because what we have seen is that because there has been a lack of demand for employees right now amongst our major partners here in the state, because of the community being flooded with those that had left federal government, right? So we've had to then work with Montgomery County, work with WorkSource Montgomery, work with Frederick County, quite honestly, work with those others that have those unemployed federal workers that now are looking for a place to go. And so part of what our mission has been this year is that we have been able to extend those opportunities at BioHub to those unemployed federal employees, which may not necessarily be that entry-level employee that we like to talk about a lot, but it's entering them back into a laboratory environment that perhaps they haven't been in quite some time. and it qualifies them for some of those entry-level positions. So we've worked with them. We've also, because of the reputation of the curriculum that we use with NIBRT, we've been able to attract businesses from out of state. So there's about 8 states that we have worked with that have brought their employees here to be trained on the curriculum in which we're working because of the level of confidence that they have in what we're able to do. With that, I would like to propose that BioHub Maryland has turned into as much as of an economic development program as a workforce development program. We're now clearly working with Visit Montgomery. We had a great meeting with the tourism office and talking about the types of companies that we're bringing into Montgomery County to showcase, of course, not only BioHub Maryland, but the resources and why Maryland is the 3rd largest biotech ecosystem, and Montgomery County has a lot to do with that. So we're happy to be able to show off where we are and what we do. So what we're committed to for Montgomery County, our partnerships are here, right? The majority of our partners for BioHub Maryland are here. Our public sector partners are here, which includes you, which includes the state delegation, which includes the federal delegation that have been so supportive of us over the years. We moved from Frederick County to Montgomery County because we believe that this is where our future lies. So when we talk about sustainability, and Balil was very, very helpful in trying to really allow us to understand what your thought process might be on this. We have looked at additional programming to bring in that that demographic that may be that demographic that is that true entry-level participant. We do work with WorkSource Montgomery, and that's a great partnership, and they're able to do that with us. But there's also a couple of other programs that are out there. One that is within the Department of Labor, and that's the SNAP ENT program. And this is for future use, to be able to work with the SNAP program about their job requirements and their training requirements for their recipients of that program, but also the Pell Grant program. And so we are currently meeting with the community colleges in the state and the Community College Association President Brad Phillips to talk with him about how we can become that partner with the community colleges so that Pell Grants can be worked through BioHub Maryland at the community college level. And I think that will be additional programs, which adds to the addition of the EARN program that we have through the State Department of Labor, and other programs like what we have through Bowie State University, partnerships with them, and a variety of others to be able to make sure that our sustainability is there. And I know that I'm committed to looking at all of those opportunities. And as we stated in our document that you have, we will be able to be sustaining without your contribution. Hopefully by 2029, we will get to that point to be able to do that. However, I will just emphasize for the record that any investment in this program or other programs that help to assist the life science community at the economic development level or the workforce development level is not without merit and should be heavily looked at as a way of future programming. And Michelle Ferrone, our Chief Operating Officer, we do have a slide presentation. I think you have a copy of that as well, and we're happy to go through it if you would like us to do that, or we're happy to take questions.
There's no need. We have seen it, but thank you so much for bringing it up. I'm going to ask the ECON executive team if there's anything else to add, or...
No, we've been supportive of this program as you have for workforce purposes. We can attest to what everybody knows, the research funding, the federal cuts. At the same time, the two of the largest biotech news stories in the last year, as you know, you were there at Samsung Biologics, and AZ's starting to expand its biomanufacturing, not only here but also in Frederick. But I think that might be opportunities you might want to address.
And we certainly are in contact with all of them.
Yeah, that event at Samsung was amazing. So, and I was proud to be there too. I think without objection, we can say that we approve the ECON executive recommendation. Thank you so much for the leadership and understanding that we must meet the reality that we're all facing as a nation, especially in the Washington, D.C. region, as you correctly stated. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.